I wasn't supposed to hear it. I was sitting at my desk, staring at the open spreadsheets on my laptop when my phone rang. My father's name flashed on the screen. Dad, a name that once carried warmth, but lately felt like an obligation. I answered. Hey, Dad. No response. At first, I thought it was a bad connection, but then I heard rustling, the sound of a chair scraping against the floor, a sigh, and then his voice. She's a failure. She'll never succeed. My stomach twisted. I froze, the phone still pressed against my ear. Come on, Greg. My mother's voice chimed in, quieter, but just as cutting. She's doing fine. She pays the mortgage, doesn't she? My father scoffed. That's the least she can do after everything we've done for her. You think I'm proud of her? She was a mistake that should have never happened. A constant disappointment. And she thinks she's successful? She'll never be anything more than a joke. A mistake. A joke. The words sliced through me like 1,000 paper cuts. My mouth went dry, my fingers tightening around my phone. I wanted to hang up. I wanted to scream. But I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. She's lucky we even let her be part of this family, my father continued. I don't know why she bothers trying so hard. She'll never be one of us. I realized then, he had never meant to call me. He had forgotten to hang up. That's when the call ended. The silence in my apartment was deafening. My heart pounded so loudly I thought it would shake the walls. I sat there for a long time, staring at nothing. For the past 6 years, I had been quietly paying their mortgage. They thought their payments were going to the bank, but the truth was, I was the one keeping a roof over their heads. Through JSC Holdings, the investment company I'd created with the help of my financial advisor, I had bought their mortgage from the bank after they nearly lost the house. They never read the fine print. They never knew. They had no idea they had been living under my generosity. And now I realized they never would have cared. My whole life I had bent over backwards trying to earn my father's approval. I worked harder than anyone else, climbed higher in my career, made more money than he ever did. But it was never enough. It would never be enough. But this was the moment that changed everything. I exhaled slowly, my hands steady as I reached for my laptop. I opened the folder containing the mortgage agreements, the payment schedule, the ownership documents. My father thought I was a failure, that I was nothing. But he was about to learn exactly who he had been depending on all these years. And in 1 week, he was going to get the ultimate surprise. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, my father's words looping in my mind like a broken record. She was a mistake that should have never happened. It wasn't just the insult. It was the certainty in his voice. The way he said it like it was a fact, not an opinion. As if my entire existence was an inconvenience. I should have been used to it. My father had never been one to offer praise. Even as a kid, I had to fight for his approval. Straight A's? Not good enough. Promotions? Expected. Buying my first home? Waste of money. Everything I did was either dismissed or criticized. But through it all, I held on to one fragile hope. Maybe if I worked hard enough, I could change his mind. That hope shattered the moment I heard that call. By sunrise, I was done feeling hurt. I was done feeling anything. I pulled myself out of bed, made a cup of black coffee, and sat down at my desk. The glow of my laptop screen reflected in my tired eyes as I opened the folder labeled JSC Holdings. Property number 12. My parents' house. The mortgage they thought they were paying was actually in my name. The bank had transferred it to JSC Holdings years ago when they were months away from foreclosure. Back then, my mother had called me in tears, begging me to help. My father had refused to ask, too proud to admit defeat, but I stepped in anyway. I had set up the perfect arrangement. They thought they were making payments to the bank, but in reality, every check they sent was going straight to my LLC. Of course, I was covering the majority of the cost. 6 years. 6 years of paying thousands every month so they could live comfortably, never once asking for a thank you. never once expecting them to grovel. But I had expected basic decency. I clicked through the documents, my hands steady as I reviewed the fine print. When I first set up the mortgage buyout, my financial advisor, Mark, had insisted on including a purchase option clause, a legal safeguard in case things ever went south. Back then, I had laughed. What could possibly go wrong? Now, I wasn't laughing. If they missed a payment, JSC Holdings had the right to seize full ownership of the house immediately. My parents would be downgraded to month-to-month tenants, and if they failed to pay rent, I could evict them under state law. They had no idea how much power I actually had. I leaned back in my chair, letting the weight of it settle over me. My father thought I was a failure. He thought I would never amount to anything. But he had been living under my roof this entire time. A bitter smile tugged at my lips. I had the power to take everything from them. The only question was, did they deserve it? As if on cue, my phone buzzed. Mom. Hey, sweetheart, can you come over for dinner this Sunday? We'd love to see you. I stared at the message. The last time she invited me for dinner, it had been for one reason: money. I debated ignoring it, but something in my gut told me to play along. If my father could pretend to love me, I could pretend right back. So I typed, me. Of course, looking forward to it. A lie, but necessary. Before closing my laptop, I had one last thing to check. My uncle, my dad's older brother, had always been on my side. He was the only one in the family who had ever treated me like I mattered. I texted him. Me. Hey, Uncle Ray. I need to ask you something. Have you ever heard Dad say anything about me? Anything unusual? His reply came almost instantly. Uncle Ray. Jessica, we need to talk. I didn't want to be the one to tell you this, but it's worse than you think. My chest tightened. Worse? What else had they been saying? The phone rang and I answered on the first ring. Uncle Ray? He sighed. Jessica, I've kept quiet for too long, but after what I heard last week, I can't anymore. I braced myself. What did they say? There was a pause, then, they don't just talk about you behind your back. They've been planning something. Your father? He's been looking into your finances. He's convinced you've been hiding money from them. He told your mom last week that if you don't willingly hand over more cash, they'll find a way to force your hand. Blood roared in my ears. Force my hand? How? He mentioned calling your employer, trying to discredit you, maybe even contacting the IRS to audit you. A cold, sharp anger settled in my gut. They weren't just ungrateful. They weren't just cruel. They were willing to destroy me for money. I took a slow breath, my fingers curling into fists. Uncle Ray, I need you to do something for me. Anything, sweetheart. I need proof. I didn't know what my parents had planned, but one thing was certain. They thought I was weak. They had no idea who they were dealing with. And in just a few days, they were going to learn exactly how wrong they were. I spent the next 2 days preparing. If my father wanted to play dirty, I'd show him just how dangerous underestimating me could be. First, I called Mark, my financial advisor. Jessica? He greeted, his voice warm. I take it this isn't just a social call? Not exactly, I said, tapping my pen against my desk. I need to know exactly how airtight our agreement is on property number 12. If they miss a payment, how fast can I act? Mark didn't even hesitate. Immediately. The purchase option clause allows JSC Holdings to assume full ownership the second they default. They'd have no legal recourse, unless they have $350,000 lying around to buy you out. I smirked. They don't. Then they're screwed. I exhaled slowly, feeling a sense of control settle over me. Good, I said. I need you to do one more thing. Watch their account. I have a feeling they're already struggling, and I need confirmation that their next payment will bounce. Mark chuckled. That won't take long. From what I see, their balance is dangerously low. If they don't magically find $5,800 by the 15th, they're toast. I glanced at the calendar. That was in 4 days. 4 days until my father, the man who called me a failure, would wake up to realize he had been living on my generosity. 4 days until he would have to beg me for help. I wasn't going to give it. On Sunday, I drove to my parents' house as if nothing had happened. The sight of their home, the home I owned, filled me with an odd sense of detachment. This place had once been my safe haven. Now, it was enemy territory. As I walked up the driveway, my mother flung the door open, her face beaming. "Jessica, sweetheart, come in." Her enthusiasm was fake. I knew it now. I stepped inside, the scent of garlic and roasted chicken filling the air. My father sat at the head of the table, arms crossed, his expression unreadable. My mother hovered beside him, placing dishes carefully as if the perfect dinner would soften whatever they were about to ask of me. My brother Liam leaned back in his chair, smirking. Unlike me, Liam had never struggled for our father's approval. He was the golden child, the one who could do no wrong, despite the fact that he had 0 accomplishments to his name. I took my seat, my face a mask of neutrality. "Jessica," my father finally spoke, his voice thick with forced warmth. "It's good to see you." I nodded. "You too, Dad." There was an awkward silence before my mother jumped in, her voice syrupy sweet. "We've been thinking a lot about family lately," she said, reaching for my hand across the table, "and how important it is to support one another in difficult times." I didn't react. That's true. My father exhaled as if this was hard for him, as if he were the one making the sacrifice. "The truth is, Jessica, we need your help. The mortgage payment this month is a little tight." A little tight. They were about to default, and he was still downplaying it. "How much do you need?" I asked, feigning ignorance. My mother hesitated. "We were thinking, just an extra $3,000 a month. That should keep us stable." I nearly laughed. They had no idea I was already paying $5,800 every single month. And they wanted me to throw in another $3,000 on top of it? I set my fork down, tilting my head. "That's a lot of money." "It's nothing compared to what we've done for you," my father snapped, irritation breaking through his act. "We raised you, gave you everything. The least you can do is support your family." I held his gaze, my blood turning ice cold. The least I could do? These were the same people who had mocked me behind my back, the same father who had called me a failure while living under my roof. I took a slow sip of water, controlling my expression. "I'll think about it." My mother exhaled in relief. "Oh, sweetheart, thank you. We knew we could count on you." I forced a smile. They had no idea that in 3 days they'd lose everything. That night, I got a call from Mark. They defaulted. The words sent a shiver of satisfaction through me. "They what?" I asked, playing dumb. "They didn't make the mortgage payment," Mark repeated. "The funds weren't there. As of midnight tonight, JSC Holdings officially owns the house outright." I closed my eyes, exhaling slowly. It was done. My father, the man who had looked down on me my entire life, was now my tenant. "Do you want to start the eviction process?" Mark asked. "Not yet. I wanted to see how long it would take for them to realize the truth." I smiled, glancing at the framed family photo on my desk. It was from years ago, back when I still believed my father was capable of love. "Not yet," I murmured. "Let's see how far they're willing to go before they break." Because they would break, and this time I wouldn't be there to catch them. I didn't have to wait long. 3 days passed, and the silence from my parents was deafening. No calls, no texts, no guilt-tripping messages about family sticking together. Nothing. I knew why. They hadn't realized it yet. They still thought their payment had gone through, still believed they had everything under control. They had no idea the house they lived in, the one they called their home, was no longer theirs. At exactly 9:07 a.m. on Friday morning, the notification arrived in my inbox. Subject, urgent. Default notice, property number 12 from JSC Holdings, legal department. I opened the email, my heart pounding with a mix of anticipation and satisfaction. The legal notice was cold, formal, and undeniable. Due to failure to submit the agreed-upon mortgage payment by the deadline of the 15th, the purchase option clause has been exercised. Effective immediately, JSC Holdings is the sole owner of the property located at 2nd Street. As per contractual agreements, the current occupants will be considered month-to-month tenants, subject to rental agreements moving forward. Failure to adhere to rental terms may result in eviction proceedings. I stared at the screen, my fingers hovering over the keyboard. This was it. I had all the power now. I didn't have to call them first. They came to me. At 9:42 a.m., my phone rang. Mom. I let it go to voicemail. At 9:47 a.m., she called again. At 9:50 a.m., it was my father. I let them sweat for a full hour before I finally answered. Jessica. My mother's voice was high-pitched, frantic. There's been some kind of mistake with the bank. We just got a notice saying we've defaulted on the mortgage. But that can't be right. You have to help us. I leaned back in my chair, a slow smile creeping across my face. It's not a mistake. Silence. What? My mother's voice was barely a whisper. I said it's not a mistake, I repeated, enunciating every word. You didn't pay your mortgage. So the house? It's not yours anymore. A stunned pause, then, Jessica, sweetheart, what are you talking about? My mother let out a nervous chuckle, as if this was all a joke. This is our house. I tilted my head. No, Mom, it was your house. But the second you defaulted, JSC Holdings took full ownership. Legally, you're now tenants. The weight of my words finally landed. No, that's impossible. My father's voice cut in, his usual authority cracking with panic. The mortgage is with the bank. We've been paying it for years. I let that hang in the air for a moment. Then I dropped the final bombshell. You weren't paying the bank, Dad. You were paying me. Dead. Silence. Then, you're lying. My father's voice was low, sharp, but I could hear the fear beneath it. I sighed. No, I'm not. 6 years ago, when you almost lost this house, I bought the mortgage. You've been sending your payments to JSC Holdings every month thinking it was a bank, but it's my company. I paused for effect. I own this house. I always have. My mother's breath hitched. My father cursed under his breath. And then, my brother Liam, who had apparently been listening in, laughed. You mean to tell me we've been paying rent to our own failure of a sister this whole time? He scoffed. Well, I guess that explains why the bank's such a mess. You probably screwed up the paperwork just like you screw up everything else. I clenched my jaw, forcing myself to stay calm. Liam had always been like this. Arrogant, cruel, entitled. Well, since you seem to think I screw everything up, I said smoothly, you're going to love this part. Rent is due in 30 days, and if you can't pay, you're getting evicted. Jessica, wait! My mother started, but my father cut her off. This is a bluff, he snapped. You wouldn't do this to your own family. I let out a short laugh. Wouldn't I? I thought about the years I had spent covering for them, the thousands upon thousands of dollars I had spent keeping them comfortable while they belittled me behind my back. I thought about my father's voice on that phone call. She's a mistake that should have never happened. I thought about how they had planned to blackmail me, ruin my career, steal from me if I didn't willingly hand over more money. My father had always believed I was weak. He was about to find out just how wrong he was. I've already spoken to my lawyer, I said calmly. If you don't pay, you're out. And if you try anything, any manipulation, any threats, any accidental damage to the house, I'll press charges. You ungrateful little... I hung up before my father could finish the sentence. Within minutes, my phone exploded with messages. Mom, Jessica, please don't do this. We're family. Let's talk. Dad, you'll regret this. Mark my words. Liam, you think you're so smart? You're just a bitter, pathetic loser. We'll find a way to take the house back. Watch. I read each one, then blocked their numbers. I had spent my whole life bending over backward for them. Now I was done. I leaned back in my chair, staring out the window, letting the weight of everything settle over me. For the first time in years, I wasn't holding them up anymore. They were finally going to have to stand on their own. And if they fell, that was their problem, not mine. The days that followed were eerily quiet. No calls, no messages, no desperate pleas. I half expected my mother to show up at my door, crying and begging for forgiveness. I expected my father to rage, to try and intimidate me into reversing my decision. I expected my brother to scheme, to find some loophole that would let them keep the house. But none of that happened. Instead, they went silent. I knew why. They weren't accepting their fate. They were planning their next move. The desperate attempt. It came 3 days later, on a Wednesday morning. I was at work when my phone lit up with a call from an unknown number. I ignored it. A minute later, another call came in. And then, an email. Subject: urgent, home foreclosure mistake from law offices. I clicked it open. Dear Ms. Carter, we have been contacted by your parents, Greg and Linda Carter, regarding the recent foreclosure of their home. They believe there has been a misunderstanding and would like to discuss the possibility of reinstating ownership. Please contact us at your earliest convenience to avoid further legal complications. Sincerely, John R. Hastings, Esquire. I closed the email with a smirk. They had hired a lawyer. Of course they had. I forwarded the email to Mark, my financial advisor. Less than 10 minutes later, he called me back laughing. They don't have a case, he said. They signed the mortgage contract. They signed the purchase option clause. They signed everything. They can't fight this in court because legally, you're in the right. I exhaled, relieved but not surprised. I figured, but they won't stop, will they? Mark chuckled. Probably not. But there's nothing they can do. I thought about my father. His pride, his arrogance. The way he would rather destroy me than admit he had failed. Number they wouldn't stop. They'd keep pushing until they had nothing left to hold on to. That night, as I was finishing up dinner, my phone rang. Uncle Ray, I picked up. Hey, Uncle Ray. I just got off the phone with your father, he said without greeting me. His tone was serious. You need to be careful. I frowned. What now? He's not just trying to fight this legally. Ray sighed. He's looking for other ways to make you cave. A chill ran down my spine. What do you mean? He's calling your job, trying to get you fired. My stomach dropped. Are you serious? He told me, word for word, that if you won't give them back the house willingly, he'll ruin you another way. He said something about contacting HR, making up a complaint, trying to frame you for fraud. Anything that could get you out of the picture. I closed my eyes, inhaling deeply. Of course he would. When faced with his own failures, my father would rather burn everything to the ground than admit defeat. But he wasn't just going after the house anymore. He was going after me. I wasn't about to wait for him to make his move. The next morning, I walked into HR myself. Jessica? My manager, Lauren, greeted me warmly. What's up? I forced a small smile. I need to talk to you about something important. In private. She led me into her office, shutting the door behind her. I took a deep breath. I need to give you a heads up about something. My father, he's going to try and get me fired. Lauren's brows furrowed. What? I explained everything. The mortgage, the default, the threats. The moment I finished, she let out a long breath and shook her head. Jessica, let me be clear. You are not going anywhere. Relief flooded through me. We deal with stuff like this more often than you'd think, she continued. People with grudges, family drama, false reports. If your father calls, we'll document everything, but I promise you, he doesn't have the power to touch your job. She gave me a reassuring smile. I'll notify our legal team just in case. If he steps 1 foot out of line, we'll hit him with a cease and desist. I exhaled, tension I hadn't realized I was carrying leaving my body. My father had lost his house. And now, he had lost his power over me too. That night, it happened. A knock at my door. A hard, urgent knock. I knew before I even opened it. I swung the door open, and there they were. My parents. My father stood stiff, his face red with anger. My mother's eyes were swollen from crying. "Jessica," she whispered. "Please." I folded my arms. "What do you want?" "We need the house back," my father said, his voice low, threatening. "You have no right to do this to us." I tilted my head, unimpressed. "I have every right. Legally, financially, morally." My mother clasped her hands together, desperate. "We raised you. We gave you everything. You're punishing us for what?" I cut in sharply. "For calling me a failure? For saying I was a mistake? For trying to ruin my life the moment I stopped giving you money?" She flinched. My father's jaw clenched. "You're being cruel." I let out a short, humorless laugh. "No, Dad," I said, voice steady. "I'm being fair." A thick silence settled between us. Then my father's eyes darkened. His lips curled into a sneer. "You'll regret this, Jessica. You think you're winning, but you're not. You'll never be anything without us. And one day you'll realize that." Something inside me clicked into place. The last remaining sliver of hope I had that he could ever change, shattered. I met his gaze head on. "Then I guess we'll see, won't we?" Without another word, I shut the door in their faces, and for the first time in my life, I felt completely free. The moment I closed that door, I knew. I was done. Not just with their manipulation, not just with their entitlement, with them. I stood there for a long time, my hands gripping the doorknob, my heart pounding in my chest. I had spent years trying to earn my father's respect. Years hoping that one day he'd look at me and see someone worth being proud of. But in that moment, as his threat still rang in my ears, I realized something that should have been obvious all along. No matter what I did, it would never be enough for them, and I didn't need it to be. The next morning, I sent the final notice. Subject: Notice to vacate. Property number 12 from JSC Holdings Legal Department. Dear Mr. and Mrs. Carter, as previously notified, the mortgage agreement for the property located at 2nd Street is no longer in effect due to non-payment. As of today, your tenancy is officially terminated. You are required to vacate the premises within 30 days. Failure to comply will result in formal eviction proceedings. Please ensure all personal belongings are removed before the deadline to avoid legal complications. Sincerely, Jessica Carter, owner, JSC Holdings. I stared at the email for a long time before hitting send. This was it. They were out of my life. It didn't take long for the fallout to begin. My mother called me 27 times that day. I didn't answer. My father left a single voicemail. "You'll regret this. One day you'll come crawling back. And when you do, we won't be here." I listened to it twice. Then I deleted it. Liam, my brother, tried one last desperate move. Liam: "Congrats, Jessica. You just ruined our family. I hope you're happy." I didn't reply. They had spent years making me feel like I was the problem, like I was never enough, like I should be grateful just to exist in their world. But now they were the ones without a home. And I was finally free. 30 days passed. I didn't go to the house, didn't check in, didn't ask if they needed help. I didn't need to. Mark handled everything. He confirmed that they moved out the day before the deadline, likely trying to save the embarrassment of being formally evicted. The house was left mostly intact, though they took what they could and left the rest in piles of garbage. Typical. I drove there one last time, just to see it. The house was quiet, empty. The home I had once cherished, the place where I had grown up, was now mine alone. But as I stood in the doorway, staring at the abandoned rooms, I felt nothing. No sadness, no guilt, no nostalgia. Just relief. I pulled out my phone and dialed Uncle Ray. "They're gone," I said simply. He exhaled. "How do you feel?" I thought about it for a second. Then I smiled. Lighter. I sold the house 2 weeks later. The market was strong, and within days, it was off my hands. The profits? I used them to start a fund for young women escaping financially abusive families. Women who, like me, had been made to believe they owed their families everything just for being born. Because I knew how it felt to be trapped. I knew how it felt to believe that love had to be earned. But I had learned something important through all of this. Real family isn't determined by blood. It's determined by who truly stands by you. And my real family? It wasn't them. It was me. 3 months later, a message popped up in my inbox. It was from my mother. "Mom, Jessica, please, I don't know where else to go. Can we talk?" I stared at it for a long time. A few months ago, I would have agonized over this. I would have questioned whether I was making the right decision, whether I was being too harsh, too cruel. But now, I simply deleted the message. Because some bridges deserve to be burned, and I wasn't looking back.